Hello everyone. Have you ever seen a virtual conference being held and what it looks like basically? So today I'll be showing you some bits of ICEECE 2026, which is International Conference on Elementary Education and Educational Innovation by the University of Cirebon in Indonesia. I had been to Cirebon during our Edu Tour Conference and Awards of ECDF to Jakarta and Cirebon in Indonesia in 2024. So our delegation had gone there. We had held the conference and we also did some school tours, and we got a lot of insight into how their schools work, what are the educational philosophies, how is the Merdeka curriculum that they follow shaped, and it's very interesting. But more interesting now is, in this event I have been a member of the editorial board of the research papers. So I was given some research papers which I needed to go through, look at their scope, look at how it was done, and they would be publishing the papers that we have selected in their upcoming journal. So this is really, really interesting because I could get to read some very interesting and innovative research papers that had come up to me for review, and as a reviewer it was a pleasure to review these papers. And I would say that a lot of things have been talked about, AI and innovation and everything, but at the end of the day it is basically the human values, the humanity in every human that really matters. Because when we focus on the AI skills and data analysis and all that is fine, but at the end of the day, empathy, compassion, all of these core skills are more important. And or maybe I would say not more important, but it should go hand in hand in order to make a human very rounded. And so in early childhood education we need to develop these skills for children right from the start. So I'll give you a glimpse of my presentation today in this virtual conference held on 22nd and 23rd. So I'm invited as a speaker, and I would also be presenting my views on what the early childhood education should look like in the future. So I'll be sharing my 2 cents on that, and be a part of the Mockingbird show and watch this episode till the end, because here I'll be sharing a lot about what is actually the way forward for early childhood education and educators. So thank you for joining me today. If you have not yet liked and subscribed to the channel, please do so and be a part of the Mockingbird show. So here we go. I'm waiting for my turn to speak because my previous speaker, she is speaking already, and right after that it will be my turn.
It could help, sustain, facilitate, who they are and what they should do, but not dictate. They're different. Okay, so technology should not dictate, should not determine the future of our children. And critical thinking and religious education are not contradictory. Character education, religious education, moral education, and critical thinking and scientific development are not contradiction. But sometimes like this, well, we teach them too much.
Okay. A very good morning, distinguished guests, respected speaker, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Edupreneur, and it is my pleasure to serve as your moderator for this special Insight station. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we are very delighted to have an accomplished education leader from India who has dedicated more than 2 decades to advancing early childhood education and empowering educators through innovative educational initiatives. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Vasavvi Acharyya. Throughout her career, Dr. Acharyya has led various initiatives in teacher development, early childhood education, skill development, and educational consultancy. It is a great honor to have Dr. Acharyya joining us today to present her valuable insight and experience. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Vasavvi Acharyya. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. Good morning. Namaskar.
Okay, I believe that we have a very short time in this session, so without further ado, let me help you to show the PPT slides of yours.
Thank you, Fitri, for introducing me, and a very good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to sincerely thank Professor Abdul Karim for making me a part of this insightful and important conference, and for considering me in the editorial board. So I have the pleasure of meeting several school leaders from Cirebon during our ECDF conference awards and Edu Tour in Jakarta and Cirebon. That was in 2024. And the visit gave us a lot of opportunity to connect, exchange ideas, and create fond memories together. So I feel this is a very special occasion because we are continuing this meaningful connection and conversation around education. So I'll be presenting my insight into the future of elementary education from information to transformation. And I'm allotted a very short timeline, so I'll be covering few aspects that I feel are very crucial. So when I look back at my journey in education over 2.5 decades, working with children, teachers, parents, and education institutions, I realized that the biggest change in education is not merely technological, the biggest change is philosophical. So moving to slide 2, I'll be covering a few topics which I feel are very crucial. One is subject-based learning to STEAM-based thinking. So we need to go to a thinking phase from a learning phase, developing the emotional brain. Professor Ali already talked about it beautifully in in the previous my previous speakers. So thank you. That was really insightful. And also I'll be adding my bit to it, and then inclusive education and protecting the foundations while preparing the future. Next slide, please. So we are now moving from asking what should the children learn to asking what kind of human being are we helping the children become. That's a very important question, and that is the most important question in elementary education today. Next slide, please. So this is me. I have been into the early childhood space for last 25 years plus, and I've also come up with the PeaCept peace pedagogy. We have our trainings, we have our chain of preschools, and then ECDF, through which we do our work with children from the marginalized sections of the society. Next slide, please. Now coming to the topic, the World Economic Forum's Future Jobs Report, they said that analytical thinking is one of the most sought after core skills, while AI, big data, technological literacy are among the fastest growing skill. But at the same time, that report also highlighted that creativity, resilience, flexibility, curiosity, leadership and social influence as increasingly important. So we have to understand that AI, technology, all of these are coming, but at the same time, being a human first is very important, and having those core skills of resilience, flexibility, curiosity, leadership is crucial in order to be a complete and a holistic human being. Next slide, please. So the future child will not only need knowledge, the child will also need to think, to collaborate, to communicate, to create, to adapt, to care, and to understand. And that is why elementary education must move beyond the traditional model of memorizing to and reproducing answers. So we need now children who are thinking, who have the 21st century skills of critical thinking, problem solving, and all of that. And that is why we need to change the education system. That is the way forward, I feel. Next slide, please. So let me elaborate a bit on the 4 topics that I chose for today due to my limited time. First, we need to move from subject-based learning to STEAM-based thinking. So we all know about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, mathematics. It is not just adding subjects to the timetable. It's a way of thinking. So when a child is asking, why does this happen? The inquisitiveness, the curiosity of the child, that implies that the child is doing science. And when the child is thinking of a solution, it is he or she is using engineering. A child who designs, creates and expresses an idea is using art. A child who measures, compares, like in a baking class, is using mathematics. And a child who uses tools and technology to extend an idea is developing technological literacy. So the real power of STEAM lies in integration. For example, instead of simply teaching children about water, we can ask them, how can we save water? So we had done one project in our school, where the children were thinking about what is the best way to save water. And since they're very children in the early childhood years, we could not get into too much of other things, but we just told them, you don't leave the tap open. Look at the amount of water that is being wasted when we leave the tap open. So simple things where we made a poster on, how to conserve water. Then we made a pledge on how we love water and how the earth, which is giving us water, we need to respect that. So here we also can talk about the SDG goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, because they really actually align with it. So, here we must remember that STEAM is not for older children. So many times in India and in abroad, other countries, I have been doing a lot of sessions on STEAM education, and they ask me that why STEAM for early childhood education? It is not for only for the bigger grown-up children, because a 4-year-old who is building a bridge with blocks is already thinking like an engineer. A 6-year-old experimenting with shadows is already thinking scientifically. A child who creates a story, designs a structure, or finds multiple ways to solve a problem is already developing foundations of innovation. So STEAM starts right from the start. STEAM starts, when the child starts to live actually, because we are breathing. That in itself is science. So the role of teacher is not to give children answer. The role of teacher is to create an environment where the child is able to think, to innovate, to ask questions, and they feel safe to ask questions. Next slide, please. So here I'll be talking about education which consciously develops the emotional brain. So now, we are so digital and we are moving away from emotions and we are moving away from the feelings. But it is so important to develop the emotional brain because we are always asking the question, can a child read? Can a child write? What kind of score the child has got? Can the child calculate? But today we need to ask questions like, can the child manage anger? Can the child communicate feelings? Can the child resolve conflict? Can the child feel the feelings of others? So, and also very important, can the child recover from failure? Failure in our life is there. So can the child recover? It is not only about the academics, it is about understanding the child's feelings and how the child is bouncing back as well. So this is where social and emotional learning, SEL, becomes essential. The child may be academically very, very good but unable to manage anger. In that case, the child will not be a full-rounded individual. Some children are scoring excellent marks but they are unable to collaborate. They cannot do teamwork. They cannot work with others. Some of them know the answer but they're afraid to speak because their confidence level is not developed. They do not have that self-esteem. So therefore, success in education cannot be measured only by academic achievement. We must educate the whole child from the head to the toe, I would say. The whole child needs to be educated. The skills of self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, responsible decision-making and relationship buildings are not skills that we know, generally we feel are extra skills. They are the life skills that the child require. And therefore, I have come up with my PeaCept for early years pedagogy, which I have again relaunched in Dubai. I have spoken about it in Cirebon as well during the conference. And in PeaCept, we are talking about this powerful belief that peace in the world begins with peace of the child within. So we cannot expect children to create peaceful classrooms if they are not taught how to regulate, So many times we see the classrooms are not democratic, the classrooms do not resolve conflict, the classrooms do not respect differences, where, difference of color, difference of community, difference of language. So we need the diversity and inclusivity in the classroom, and the classroom should be declared a peace realm by the teacher. It should be a peace realm where every conflict is, resolved, and it is resolved through negotiation, through talking, through understanding. And so PeaCept brings together emotional intelligence, empathy, peaceful communication, conflict resolution, inclusion, lot of environment consciousness, because now again the SDGs are talking about how we need to work sustainably with the environment, because we are part of the environment. Mindfulness, which is so important in every child, how we need to be mindful, play-based experiential learning. So we are thinking about how to create children who are not, it's not that children will never experience anger, sadness or conflict. That is impossible. But the goal is, I can feel angry without hurting somebody. The child can say that like that. I can disagree without disrespecting. Maybe I'm not agreeing with the person in front of me, but I'm not disrespecting the person. I can make a mistake without being sure that I'm a failure. So you can always bounce back. So this is the mindset we need to develop. It is a lot on the mindset that we will need to work in today's education system, because it is not the academic that is just coming. It is a lot of character building, a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of the mindset of the child. So next slide, please. So inclusion, which cannot remain a policy document. So in India, we are doing a lot of work on inclusion. Inclusion needs to become a culture, So in a globally UNESCO report that reports that 100 millions of young people remain out of school, and the exclusion continues to be shaped by poverty, conflict, disability, social norms, difference in socioeconomic background. But inclusion is not only about bringing every children in the classroom, it is about making every children feel present in the classroom. So a child should not be excluded. So many times we have our RTs in India, the right to education, where we are including children from the not so fortunate backgrounds, and we get them into the good schools. But there we have seen that there's a lot of discrepancy. There's a lot where the child is not feeling connected, the child is not really being visible. So we now need to ask ourselves, does every child feel seen? Does they feel valued? Do they have a voice? Do they have a way to participate? So inclusion means that we do not expect every child to learn exactly the same way. Many times teachers are telling me, when I go to the schools, ma'am, this child is not learning in this manner. What do we say? We say that is, the board and the chalk is not the only way to teach. You can take the child out in the environment, teach the concept in a different way. So that is about inclusion, about visual representation, about music in the classroom, where we can teach something through music, through visual representation, through conversation, through, general approaches and different multidisciplinary approaches we need to do in the classroom. So the question should not be, why is the child not learning like the others? The question should be, how can I create a learning environment where the child can easily learn? This requires a fundamental shift from a deficit mindset to a possibility mindset. So this is what the teachers need to work on inclusion in a way that a child is learning in the classroom and in their own way. So that is so important in early childhood education, because the children's brain synapses are developed and their neural pathways are being developed. So at this time, how they are being taught is very, very important. Next slide, please. Last but not the least, the fourth point that I would be touching about today is we must protect the foundation while preparing the future. As we speak about artificial intelligence, robotics and emerging technologies, we must not forget the fundamentals. We need to be connected. We need to be rooted. If a child is not able to read properly, we sometimes see that the child is not reading properly, then they are not able to understand the technology meaningfully. A child who cannot reason will struggle to evaluate information. So they are not able to think critically. So how will they evaluate the information? How will they fill up, the information that they need to understand? A child who cannot communicate will struggle to collaborate, because I'm not able to communicate. How will I collaborate and become a team? So the latest UNESCO Global Education Monitoring data reminds us that despite global progress, large number of children and young people remain excluded from education. So we need literacy, we need numeracy, we need scientific thinking, I would say, but we also need empathy. We need resilience, we need ethical reasoning, and the ability to live with difference, to tolerate, to be able to understand each other. Because the future will not be shaped only by the children who know the most. It will be shaped by children who can think deeply, adapt quickly, and care profoundly. So I always say, that it is not the most intelligent or the most powerful that survive, it is the most flexible. So here we have to work a lot on the SEL of children. Next slide, please. So what should the elementary school of the future look like? I believe it should have these 5 characteristics that I have noted down. First, learning should be experiential. Children should not read about the world. They should explore, touch it, question, go out and investigate and then transform, So that is how the learning should be. Second, learning should be interdisciplinary. Real life doesn't come divided into periods like math period, science period, English period. It should have a connection. When we are doing science, we should also do other things, what is the location of the place, the geography should come in. So it should become interdisciplinary. Third, learning should become emotionally safe. So a child should not feel threatened in a classroom. A child should feel free to question. A child should feel free to express. And they should not be told to memorize. So that is very, very important, to secure the child in the classroom, and for that the teacher needs to be really democratic and loving and inclusive. Fourth, learning must be inclusive. Every child must have a place, a voice and a sense of belonging. And last but not the least, education must develop both competence and character. Because at the end of the day, knowledge without empathy can become dangerous. We have already seen that. So much of knowledge is in the world, so much of AI, everything is there. But there is no feeling for one another. There is no feeling for the person in front of us. So technology without ethics can be destructive, and intelligence without compassion can create something, intelligence without compassion can become very, very difficult, because we are using that intelligence at the same time, maybe you are using for the bad of humanity, not understanding what we can do for the earth, what we can do for the people. So the purpose of education cannot simply be to prepare children for a career. It has to be to prepare them for much more, for citizenship, for relationship, for uncertainty, the times that are coming, for responsibility, and ultimately for life. Last slide, please. So after more than 25 years in education, I think my greatest learning has been that children do not need us to fill their minds with everything we know. What they really need is for us to help them discover what they're capable of knowing. So we need to give them that space, that learning space. And they are in that space, they need to be able to create, to feel, and to become what they are. So we cannot teach them. Think about it. The child who learns to ask questions may one day become an innovator. So here, when I'm talking about STEAM education, it is always about incorporating the 21st century skills along with SEL, along with, making it a very holistic looking education. So basically, that is what I wanted to present. And so perhaps the real question we should ask is not, are our children ready for the future? The real question, are our education system ready for the children who will create the future? Because education is not about preparing children for the world we know. It is about empowering them to create a world we have not yet imagined. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I'm within the time frame, and I've done justice to this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your insightful experience. And you have talked about the education and you also state that there should be a shift of educational system in which now we have to be more focused on the philosophy of creating or the environment of education itself, leading the students to develop what's so called as emotional brain through STEM-based thinking or education, and also by implementing the seven core pillars of PeaCept. Is that correct?
Yes.
Doctor?
Yeah.
And then there are also the needs of the support system from the students' environment, such as community and their surrounding, to make it happen. One question maybe, Doctor, regarding this topic. You mentioned that there's supposed to be strong support from the community to realize the students, as you have talked earlier. and 7 PeaCept is one of the key in implementing it. So if we want to implement the concept of PeaCept, what are the initial steps that we have to take in school areas, for instance, Doctor?
Very good question, and thank you so much for that. See, when we are looking at the 7 pillars of PeaCept, we are looking at, making the, see, in my philosophy of PeaCept, the first thing is the peace comes from within. Then the second is peace in social life, and third is peace with the environment. So when we are talking about peace from within, first we need the child to understand their own feelings, label their own feelings, feel happy, feel, that they are capable, they are useful individuals. And then when we are peaceful with ourselves, when we love ourselves, we accept ourselves as we are, we extend that peace to the environment around us. Like if I love myself, I love you. If I feel that a part of me is a part of you, then I will not see the world as different. So here when we are looking at PeaCept, we are building the peace within, and at the same time we are building the peace with the people around us. And here when we are looking at that, we also extend that peace to the environment where we are living. So we need to be very, very conscious of the environment, aware of the environment, and protect it. So when here the most crucial thing that you have asked is how do we support these children, because the children do not know how to feel peaceful, how to label their emotions, how to manage their anger, how to think that way, because their brain synapses are then forming. So the very important role is that of educators. We need to educate the basic things that are traits that the educators need to have, like they need to be democratic, they need to be loving, they need to be caring. It is not about the degrees they have in early childhood education, I always feel. It is the social skills that they need. So here when they are teaching the child, when a child is crying because they did not get a toy, the teacher should sit near the child and say, I can understand that you're feeling sad. What can we do about it? How can we manage this sadness? So here the teacher is not saying, don't cry, you are a boy. It is not like that. It is understanding the child's feeling and then trying to resolve that feeling. So many times people with anger issues do not understand what is the trigger. So when you understand the trigger, you can work on that. Like if I'm sick, if I know why I'm sick, then I will know that what I need to do. If I do not understand that, how will I know what I need to do? Because I have not even pinpointed the trouble. So here the community support is important, and we are working a lot with parents. In my trainings, in my sessions with parents, we are talking about how parents play a very important role, because parents are there with the child all the time, and they need to teach those child those pillars that we have mentioned, here peace from within. So the parent need to be the right role model, because a parent who is himself in chaos, himself shouting at the child, cannot say that now don't shout, be peaceful. So we have to be the right role models, the teacher needs to be the right role models, and then we go about the trainings. We have our PeaCept courses, we have our PeaCept, like in the last session, there was a question from Dila Karisma, and she had asked my previous speaker about how do we observe the honesty and empathy in children. So here I would like to add, to her, if she is still present, what we do is we have our own, activities, like a gratitude jar. So we ask the child is too young to write. So we ask, what are you happy about today? So the child would just say, because my mother gave me a very good tiffin, to eat. I'm very happy. So the child is being grateful. So 3 grateful things. So we make the gratitude jar. Then say I give them a small scissor, and I say, what would you use this scissor for? Some children would say, I would use to cut a flower, and some would say, I would want to hurt. So we change that feeling of hurt. Why do you want to hurt your child or hurt another peer of yours? So we discuss that, and then their brain synapses are found to transform. We need to transform. We need to give them time, and the observations can be done through rubrics. So yes, it is a very long process, but if we start from the early childhood years, it is absolutely, it's going to give lifelong results. I hope that answers your question.
That's very interesting. Okay. Thank you very much, doctor. So we have to observe the student and then value their self as individual, and then they're going to learn to accept themselves as individuals, and from that point they can grow up into what's so called as holistic thinking. Acharya, for sharing your valuable insight and inspiring experiences with us today. We truly appreciate your time and
Thank you.
contribution to this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give another round of applause to Dr. Vasavvi
Thank you.
Acharyya.
Thank you so much.